good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the panel discussion on Open APIs, Key to Seamless Integration. Let me take the privilege to invite Mr. Manjunath Lakshminarayan, VP Engineering and India COE Lead, Vonage at Ericsson, our keynote speaker for the session.
Namaskaram. Good morning. Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me well. It's a very difficult task for me and probably for the panelists today. I think it's the last final day of the wonderful conference. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I believe this is the last session as well. And it's post-lunch at 3:30 p.m. It's quite an interesting time, a good time to take a nap. But fortunately and luckily for us, we have a very interesting session today on open APIs. Welcome to the world of APIs. I'd like to get a quick set a quick context before we move forward. Before we get into the core topic, I wanted to kind of talk about Vonage a little bit for those of you who may not know. So we are a global leader in the cloud communications. In terms of the enabling the communications to the business and the ability to connect. So we have several businesses under this. The CPaaS is our primary business, wherein we have voice, SMS, video, Verify, and several APIs underneath it. And then the CCaaS business, which is a contact center business, conversational commerce, as well as the unified communications. We are a global leader, as I said, and the Magic Quadrant leader in the CPaaS businesses as well. With the power of Ericsson, we are very proud to be part of Ericsson. With the power of Ericsson, we are now able to expose APIs underneath the network layers into the hands of developers. So that's a brief introduction. Let's get into the APIs. So for those of you who are not familiar with APIs, API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's essentially a method for applications to connect to each other, share data and services and so on. So many of you may be using the APIs today even without knowing about it. So if you're booking an air ticket in any of the travel aggregator portals, you're probably using one of the APIs as an example. When we talk about sharing data and services between a few different applications, obviously there's going to be some rules around it. There's going to be some set of restrictions around it. To what level are these data and services open, right? To what degree they're open? Based on that, we typically classify the APIs into either as a closed API or a private API, typically used within the organization or between the microservices, or we're talking about a partner API between two agreed partners with an agreement, or we can talk about open APIs or public APIs, which is free for the public to use, either for a fee or without, right? Now, when we talk about this, we need to understand, why open API. We want to talk specifically on open API today. Why is this important today? So I would take these numbers that I've displayed here with a pinch of salt, because there's no real data about the total number of APIs today, but just look at this. 2 million plus repositories in the GitHub specifically on APIs. 300 million APIs today, and this is the total number of APIs, not specifically open APIs, and leading up to 1.2 billion in the estimate. So these are staggering numbers that we're talking about today. What Open API essentially does for you is provides the opportunity for applications and industries to use each other's complex features that are hidden within the applications very easily, right? So what does this do? So it creates new revenue opportunities for the industries. It's going to encourage the developer community. This is free to use, so developers are going to start using it, give you instant feedback, ability for you to evangelize your technologies as well and boost your awareness of the product. And a vendor lock-in is a very key aspect when we speak about usage of APIs. So the open APIs is going to kind of open up and unleash these features in many ways for developers and the ecosystem to continue to use it in a very seamless manner today. So what does this mean to the telecom industry? So we typically I mean, once again, these are data from the internet. Take it with a pinch of salt. We are talking about 275 billion size today, leading up to about 500 billion in the next 5 years or so. North America being the leading market today, with Asia Pacific being the fastest growing market. We typically segment APIs within the telecom in terms of payment, messaging, identity, IVR, IoT, and so on and so forth. Technology-wise, the trends are obviously driven today by the 5G and microservices and serverless technologies as well. The new focus areas that we are trending towards are, as I said before, the network APIs, right? These are hidden gems which are available within the network that's very easy to expose now, and we're very proud that Vonage has been able to do this with the collaboration with Ericsson today. So let's talk about a few trends, from themes and trends that we're seeing in the market. API is not just a piece of code, right? It's a product, and it basically democratizes the complexity and unleashes the complexity underneath the functionalities of the complexities, and takes it out and into the API marketplace. The low code and no code proliferation is a very interesting topic as well. So today, with the power of these technologies, you have business users and business IT personnel being able to take advantage of APIs, even though they may not have the ability to code, right? So we call them as citizen developers, if you may. With these kind of openness that we are talking about, security management as well as the standardization becomes very key today, right? So you want to make sure that your applications are structured in a nice way. If you want to have an open API, you need everybody to be able to use it in an interoperable way. So how do you do that? You need to have some kind of open specifications. So that's where you have the specifications like Open API that comes up. By the way, I want to make a distinction here. I think there's a confusion that we have created for ourselves in the industry between Open Space API and Open API, right, together. So Open Space API is what we're talking about, and Open API together is the specification, right? I don't know why it's like that, but I want to make sure that we understand the difference there. Anything without AI and ML, doesn't work. We've got to have that everywhere, and that's obviously one of the key ingredients, in Open API as well. And finally, today we are living in an omni-channel world, right? Everybody wants to use technologies in their own preferred channel. So this is where conversational commerce becomes, really live stream, mainstream, and things like voice responses or chat boxes and so on and so forth becomes very prominent. Now, all these openness does not come with its own set of challenges. So there are several of them. I'm going to talk about just a few of them here, which I think is key and important. One is interoperability with respect to integration today, and this is where the standardization and more specifically documentation for open APIs becomes very important. And the governance standards and regulations. So it's very relevant today because, as you know, about a month ago, India announced the Data Protection Act for the country, and these kind of regulations, becomes very important. So in terms of future, I'd say that APIs, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened to the fonts there. I didn't realize that. I don't know what language that is. So APIs are ubiquitous now, and they become more hyper-connected. And then in terms of the technology adoption, microservices is still the prominent, underneath the platform for telecom industry as well today, and the adoption of serverless technologies. As I said before, the security and management is going to be really a deal breaker for the API section. And finally, the last one over there is speaking about regulatory nuances. So I firmly believe that in today's world, its various regulatory norms, around the world, companies which are going to inbuild regulatory nuances into the APIs will have a competitive edge amongst others. So that's my belief. So I'd like to end this, conclude this note by saying that APIs are the crown jewels of modern technology, and companies who are adopting the best practices and able to bypass the nuances that I spoke about is probably going to have the better of the others. So thank you very much, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed an insightful presentation. I'm truly intrigued, and I guess we all are. Let me now call upon the stage Mr. Bharat Chadda, partner at KPMG India, to introduce us to our esteemed panelists and take over for the further proceedings.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. So my name is Bharat Chadda. I'm a partner with KPMG focusing on digital solutions. My panelists are here with me, but let me just, before I bring them in, I would just like to kind of set the context about this topic. So this topic is specifically on how do we use open APIs as a key to seamless innovation. In today's rapidly evolving digital landscape where seamless connectivity and the integration of services has become paramount, open APIs stand a pivotal force driving innovation and collaboration. So that's the overall underlying theme for this particular panel. And what we're going to be talking about in different sessions or different parts of this panel is specifically about the open API landscape. We'll request the panelists to throw some light on what are the latest trends, standards, and initiatives which are driving the whole ecosystem. We'll also have the panelists talk a little bit more about the challenges faced by organizations and developers in adopting open APIs. And we have panelists from different parts of the industry. So we'll also request them to talk about what are the future projections in incorporating such kind of technologies when it comes to 5G or IoT as well. So with that, and without any further ado, I would request the panelists to please come up to the stage. So I'll start with Mr. Abhishek Shukla. He's from Red Hat. He's the Director for Telecom, Media and Entertainment Industry across India and South Africa. Please join me in welcoming him. Thank you, Abhishek. I request Siddharth Shah. He's from Bharti Airtel Limited. He's the head of product data at Bharti. Thanks, Siddharth. And lastly, we have Mr. Thomas Schenhauser. He's a CTO business lead, Asia Pacific and Japan at Intel Corporation. So we have a list of questions. Maybe I'll just take a seat. Is this working? Can you hear me at the back? Okay, thank you so much. So we have a list of questions for the panelists. We'll try and cover all the panelists in an order, and based on the responses, I'll request all three of you to please chip in whenever and however you feel convenient. To start with, I'll request Abhishek to start by talking about how he sees open APIs shaping the future of digital connectivity and service integration. Abhishek.
So thank you. Firstly, I think thank you for staying back this evening. We've got the India-England match going on. I know there is more interest in that than probably this panel, but thank you for staying back again. Now, coming back to the question about how do we see open APIs, right? So one of the things that has happened is open APIs are already evolving in the industry. Okay, they've already started playing a role, but as we see time to come, they will continue to evolve. The areas that we see that evolution will happen is around ecosystem. If I saw the slides of the gentleman just presented earlier, right? The role that will play is on few factors. One is interoperability. As and when there are complex requirements coming towards the edge, there are multiple players coming towards the edge, there'll be different software that will be used across the edge. There is a need for interoperability. Using open APIs, there is this platform provided for them to talk seamlessly. That's one of the important points. The second one is ecosystem. We are now going to talk within the telecom landscape. If you look at the telecom landscape, 5G has just started in India. 5G's primary use case is about monetization. 5G is available to all mobility customers like us. If you ask any CTO, CEO, CFO of the organization, they believe that what they've done till now has not given them any returns. But the returns will only come in towards when they start selling these, towards the enterprise or towards the edge. And at the edge, how do they monetize? They have to target various use cases towards the edge, whether it's Industry 4.0, whether it's manufacturing. And the ecosystem for that edge needs to evolve. That ecosystem, as we know today, may not be the same set of people or ISVs that are playing in that business. It could be anybody who identifies that use case and is able to develop. At the time of development, if you think that if there is no open architecture based development or open API based development, then this entire ecosystem will not be able to work in harmony. And what we land up with is something really complex towards the edge, which fundamentally will be interoperable within themselves. So I see these two important things, from how they are shaping up.
Yeah, I agree what was said. I think the key other part is really the developers. I mean, in the world where we are in telco, we are very isolated ourselves in the ecosystem and driving that really broader. So what we need to develop a developer ecosystem, which we don't have today. What I mean with that is really important to build, we talk all a lot about the 5G use case, the 455, but somehow we cannot monetize it. Why we cannot monetize it? Because it's too complex for a standard application developer to understand all the complexity on the network side. So I think it's really critical that we get that application abstraction so that you don't need to be a network engineer with 5 PhDs on the back to develop an application. So I think that's really what we need to look into it. And I think it's really important that we build that ecosystem to drive that. The other part is really, we need to make sure that we're not building stuff which is the underlaying, which is very, very specific from a company point of view. So it has to be an open source, at least that everybody can start to monetize that application too. So that's really open for a broader ecosystem also on that level.
Thank you. Thanks, Abhishek. Thomas, so this question is for you, Siddharth. What are some real-world examples where these open APIs have already made a significant impact or can be used for enabling innovative solutions?
So the concept of open APIs is not very new, right? If you think of a simple social login that you do, also uses open APIs in the background. So in different industries outside of telco, this concept has existed. So and so is the case been with banking as an example, right? To look at the balance, to kind of fetch the transactions, etc. However, in telco, this open APIs in general is something that is a new and evolving concept. For example, the identity of the customer, the telco identity or the phone number of the customer, is something that is easy to authenticate by the network operator. So, for example, most OTP-based logins could probably use an open API to kind of authenticate the customer without really having to give an OTP. Or there are other examples in terms of how we can identify fraudulent customers, so on and so forth. So there are several such examples on identity, fraud, device location, device status, things of that nature that can help enterprises serve the customers.
Maybe I can add the example that we were just talking about, how Airtel has done it. I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but so from a telco standpoint, because the focus of the response was more so on banking, right? What I've seen, and one of the key announcements that one of your C-level people made was how they're monetizing the data of your users to create an alternate credit structure in place in the market for the people who are below a certain strata or are unbanked, right? So we definitely have these credit agencies like CIBIL, so on and so forth. But these agencies have records of people who are within the financial inclusion space and they have a history. However, if you look at the unbanked population, that maybe still be a larger strata of people. And I think one of the great examples, and I know you're doing it today at Airtel, is how you're monetizing by creating that data available to various agencies from a credit standpoint.
Essentially, what you're talking about is new to credit. What happens is the 70, 80, 90 million customers who are very banked are easy to kind of understand from a credit risk standpoint. However, if you see, there's a whole host of NBFCs, fintechs, buy now, pay later kind of companies who are giving loans to the new to credit kind of market. And here is where a lot of telco data becomes very, very powerful to kind of differentiate between who could probably be using this as a means of fraud versus who's genuinely in need. And that reduces the risk profile of the entire portfolio for them.
Thank you, Siddharth and Abhishek. Suddenly this become loud. So the next question on my list is back for you, Abhishek. And this is specifically requesting you to talk about how open APIs will be considered pivotal in the network and telecom landscape in the future.
Yeah, before I start how will they look in the future, let me just go back past in 5 years. From a telco operator landscape standpoint, 4G was the place where the evolution happened, right? One of the events or one of the things that happened was network function virtualization, right? Network function virtualization primarily was disaggregation of the entire network layer within an operator. So if you look at maybe 5 years behind, operators would go to a vendor A and put in a request for providing certain network functions. They would come back with a black box and fully own the entire solution. Whereas in the last 5 years, what has happened is there's been a clear disaggregation at various levels, where Red Hat has actually also played a significant role with the Indian operators, wherein they are now commoditized the entire internal network. And today, if you see the 4G that all of us are consuming, most if not all is through the technology that Red Hat has provided. What under the hood, what has happened is operators have gone back and commoditize or democratize the entire network stack. So today they have a choice that is available to buy from hardware from a certain vendor, software from a certain vendor, and application from a certain vendor. How that has happened is because of the push from the operators in India, everybody has been receptive to open up their APIs. For example, application A is able to run on the same cloud layer today as an application B, which was not there about 10 years back. Right? So that is what has happened, and this is very much still internal focus to an operator. Come 5G, I think while we were in the waiting area, we spoke, 5G is just not a generation change. It's more like an architecture change. It's based on microservices, right? It's a complete re-evolution of the wheel, and this gives the opportunity for operators to make sure that whatever they have and deploy now is fully open in terms of core to the edge. And when they apply these principles of open source, open architecture, with the help of an ecosystem which is providing open APIs to consume, they are able to extract the best value out of the ecosystem, right? And that is one of the points that I drove right at the beginning. How do operators drive new revenue streams? It's through the enterprise. It's creating enterprise edge. And the edge can only evolve if the entire edge and the ecosystem is based on open principles, open API, and are able to interoperate.
Just one add-on on that side. The other part is also very important is, even we have the technology ready, we have the API, let's say everything is in a perfect world. I think we need also to see how do we drive the go-to-market together. How do we create a more open joint partnership between operators, between the different ISV, between the different partners? Because I think that's another part which we also need to be ready when we have all these open APIs standards done. And again, Airtel shows it, how it goes. But I think as an industry, I think there's still a way to go. And I think we all in the room here are responsible also to make sure that we come together jointly and define that, because I think that will help us as an industry to move up to the next level.
So Thomas, maybe we can continue with the next question for you as well. Could you speak a little about specific standards and initiatives that are shaping the open API ecosystem within the telecom and network industry, and how they are contributing towards growth and development?
Sure, happy to do that. Yeah, I think the Open API, of course, got a lot of attraction the last couple of years since 5G came in. I mean, there was Gamara project by Open Linux Foundation, which started. There was GSMA who opened up their Open Gateway. Last year, I think, was the announcement at Mobile World Congress. Luckily, these two collaborations are working together. So it's also important that we jointly do that as a standard group. Then we see on Etsy is also doing standardization, or specifically on the MEC Edge platform. So what we see today is, I think, we have a lot of these standard groups. So I think that's ticking a box. I think we are on track. And the good news, as I said, is, they're not looking, I'm the standard body, I want to run it. There's really a collaboration between the different organizations, which I think is critical to be successful, because what we don't want to have is that we have 5 or 6 different standards. And then again, we have not the muscle to drive ecosystem, because end of the day, developers, ecosystem partners are only interested if there is a simple one standard and I can spend my engineering power, my resources there, versus I have to split them through different standards on that side. So I think that's what we see today, and I think that will help us again. That will help us, to drive 5G monetization, which we all here in the room want to see, because we did a lot of investment and we realized that the 5G monetization is not happening from the consumer side. So I think that's a critical part to be successful.
If I can add, I think just from a layman's standpoint, how important is standardization? It's the classic case of Type-C charger versus your lightning charge, right? So the ecosystem has to evolve on the same lines. Just to add on, I think, to what Thomas says, yes, the way that development happens is, there are standard bodies who define the standards, then there are communities who develop according to those standards, and come together to make sure the blueprint or provide the best form of architecture to utilize those standards. And those communities primarily then get into enterprises as offerings, which are consumed by the end users, to get the services, developers to develop on top of that, and that's how the whole ecosystem continues to work.
Just 2 points. It's really a great example. I think that's also where it showed the power, when you look into the USB-C, even the one who changed, who was trying to keep his phone as it is, he changed because why? Because there was a country who pushed very, very hard, multiple countries. So I think it's also something as an organization we can do as operators, as partners, as vendors, to push that really hard to get over that. The other part is, one is of course the standardization, but standardization alone is a book you can read, you throw it away end of the day. Maybe you remember a few things. I think what is missing at the moment is really that we build an ecosystem, an open source community to help to implement that in a faster way. So we need to build an open source community who help to build all this, not only the API on a higher level, also do the mapping, etc. Because that's really the missing piece, so that we can find also multiple partners who are willing to, produce then a product, support that product. I think that's critical, that we not have then suddenly the big 5 who then dominate that, and then we again coming into not an open environment. So that's only the part I want to add on top of it.
Sure. Thomas, could you also talk about the common challenges organizations and developers are going to face in adopting open API?
Yeah, I think the challenges is really around, you can have an API, but you have underlay code you need to have. And I think that's where the where I think where if every operator you have every organization who codes by themselves, I think it's a little bit a lot of effort, and you're not getting that done. So I think we need to find a collaboration on that underlay above the abstraction layer. I think that's under control, really, that kind of source, sharing that between each other. And then again, we talk about the upper layer to the developers for application, for use cases which can help. The other part which is critical, which we always forget, is the hard part is really getting the south part down to the network, because we still have multiple network provider. So we need to find a wrapper around that we really can call, like a phone number, like quality of assurance, whatever we need. That part is also still in a little bit of gray area. So it's good to have the high level, the perfect world, but underlay, we need really to go a little bit deeper. And I think that's a little bit a challenge we see on that side.
Thank you. Back to you, Siddharth. So, seamless communication and interoperability, these are two topics that we've spoken about quite a bit. Can you elaborate on how these two areas would really function as critical functions within the network industry?
So I think Abhishek and Thomas spoke about interoperability and integration quite a bit. But to give you an example, right? Let's take the example of a login API. It's a very simple login API. If and if you think of most geographies today, operators are fragmented in nature, and so assume a geography with 5 different operators having 5 different such APIs, and the complexity that a developer would need to kind of go through to kind of build a login API that can serve customers across all the 5 operators, right? And that is the complexity that we want to kind of eliminate at the end of the day, right? And that is why simplicity is important. That is why consistency is important. What happens is, if you don't do this, there will probably be another player that sits on top of all of these operators who's making this consistent for the developer. And that probably takes away the share of the monetizable opportunity from the operator. And so it's in the interest of the operators to also kind of make the standard in nature. It's also in the interest of the developers and generally from a customer's experience standpoint to make it much easier for everyone to use.
Could you also extend the thoughts on how OpenAPI is going to directly impact consumers? I think you touched upon a couple of examples. Could you just throw some more examples?
So, I mean, it's going to impact pretty much every single industry. We've talked about, I mean, it will impact agriculture, IoT, and all kinds of different industries. But I think the couple of examples that we were really talking about was, for example, the OTP example, right? There's about a 10 to 30% drop off just because customers get an OTP and they can't enter the OTP correctly. And this is a problem for the enterprises. This is a problem for the customer. Imagine when you're trying to enter an OTP for a banking transaction, right? This drop off is fairly significant and impacts customer experience quite a bit. And so this is something that we can easily solve for. The other example we were talking about was new to credit customers or customers who are low on the risk profile but not so much in the banking domain as such. I think that is the other big use case for open APIs, where we can really reduce the credit risk and allow customers to get into a domain where they can really get loans for working capital, etc. So I think these are 2 big use cases.
I think outside of the enterprises, one of the other elements is even government's focus on API, right? If you look at all the direct benefit schemes that they're using today, it's about a consortium of a lot of data that they source from various agencies such as banks and are able to provide benefits, citizen benefits into the consumer's account, right? One such app, is, for example, the recently launched DigiYatra, for that matter, right? It has made the life of people who are traveling so seamless. Today, you're able to, use your, your boarding pass and able to do a face check-in into the airport end to end within 10 minutes, right? This is one of the examples how even the government is laying huge emphasis, while they may not be able to monetize it for that matter, right? But open APIs are fundamentally even driving change at that level.
Just hold on to that mic, Abhishek. So we had the last question, thankfully, for this afternoon. What do you, and we'll go through in that order, Abhishek, Thomas, and Siddharth. What future trends and developments do you anticipate in the realm of open APIs?
So I'm going to be short and crisp. I'm going to end it very quickly. I believe we are still scratching the surface in terms of open API and how we're able to monetize it. But this is, as the trend kind of increases, it's going to bring in another set of problems. One is about API governance and management. I think we all need to keep a keen eye out on that, right? And the second trend that I believe prima facie is going to be AI/ML APIs, right? Because fundamentally, this is where the end state is going to be. So these are the two key trends, words, and future that I believe in terms of this whole API, open API, philosophy that we're trying to drive.
Thank you.
Okay, I try also to be very crispy and short. I think on top of what was said before is also, I think we need to be really careful around not only talk about the high level open API, we really need to make sure that's usable for developers. It has to be developed for developers, not for our network guys, not for our network geeks. I think that's a critical part. That's the only way we can really build a broader developer ecosystem. That has to be the top priority, whatever we do in that environment. Without that, we come back to stage number one and have to start again. So I think that's really the things which we need to take away.
I think the next couple of years is going to be pretty fun for open APIs. I mean, the standards will evolve, the developer community will evolve. We'll have to embed privacy and customer privacy and security within these. It's going to be very monetizable as a result of all of this. So I'm very excited about that.
Okay, so thanks for that, Siddharth. With that, the panel comes to an end, and I'll just take this opportunity to spend about 2 minutes to summarize what the panel has spoken about. So open APIs is a platform focused completely on interoperability. The panel spoke about how open APIs is creating an ecosystem for creators to be able to monetize what they would like to deliver over 5G using an open architecture. And I think some of the examples, I really got impressed with the example on financial inclusion. Apologies for the word, financial inclusion for the unbanked people using open APIs, specifically for those who are unable to kind of utilize the existing banking infrastructure and utilizing the information and data which is captured for each subscriber based on the unique phone number that each has. I think this is obviously going to result in a lot of innovation which is already there in the fintech sector. We talked about improving customer experience, and I think a great example was the OTP dropouts, and the last one on improving citizen benefits. I think that was the DigiYatra experience. I didn't think of it that way when I was using DigiYatra. For me, it was great that it cuts down 2 hours of waiting time to about a few minutes. So I think for me, open API is the way to go. But I think one of the other aspects about how telecom operators are really pushing the pedal over 5G by disaggregating the entire network infrastructure, hardware and software. That, in my opinion, is the pivotal aspect of making open APIs adoptable by the developers. And I think the word that was used was develop them for developers. I think that really stuck in my mind. And to enable these edge use cases, I think the kind of challenges and future trends was the last few topics that we spoke about are really critical. So I'll just kind of spell it out for you, which is specifically on standardization. I think the kind of rules or regulations, if I can call it, the standards that are coming out, the standards have to be kind of built in collaboration between developers and the industry, which is very critical. And open APIs can really push that collaboration forward. The wrapper around interoperability across network operators was one of the points which really stuck as a challenge. And future trends, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, the governance of open APIs, the reusability factor, and to end what Siddharth mentioned around embedding privacy and how that is going to push forward the monetization aspect. I think the panel really covered everything very adequately, and I thank you guys for spending a late afternoon on a Sunday over a cup of coffee earlier and now with this. I really enjoyed this panel, and I hope the audience also did. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.